will be here.
Sorry. I found them.
Oh,
I found them.
they're there.
I went to a different one.
He will be here March 26th to April 2nd, along with the mayor of Sant'Arcangelo.
So
and
April when? I'm sorry.
March 26th to April 2nd.
Okay.
And I've asked Stephanie to say we'd love to meet with him. He does not speak English, but I know we can get someone from the school or from the Italian community here to help be a translator so that we can talk to him in person about what his ideas are and what he's planning. He's here with the mayor of Sant'Arcangelo because UNH does every year the Italian Film Festival, which is from Bologna, a selection of films. Some are in Italian, some are American films, some are new, some are old, and they're shown. Mara, you're probably familiar with it.
I have. They started doing this after I moved here, so
Okay.
I missed that.
And they will be showing some films on March 29th at the Music Hall Lounge. Really? I'll try to find out more about that. That's a Sunday. So it's like a 10 to 2, 10 to 1 selections of films. And that might be a time when we could meet or do something after that, but more to come on that. But know that that's, happening, and it's really going to be a great time, I think, for us to get this figured out. And now that I know he's done this in all kinds of towns all over Italy, obviously they know a lot about installation and about our special requirements, but I don't know anything about the artwork itself, but a little bit of background on that. So more to come. But that will happen right after our March meeting. So there'll probably be some information that we get out in the meantime about what that's all about. And UNH does, if you go on like UNH Italian Film Festival, you'll see the list of films. The schedule isn't up yet, but I believe it's free and seems like a great event. And Tiziano, in addition to being the artist, he's a city councilor in Sant'Arcangelo, which is why he's coming. Do you know any more than I do, Sean?
I do not. Chris, you know a lot.
Okay. Ernie, we're so glad you're on.
Did she hear us?
She waved.
Yeah.
She's mute.
I did get the annual report done, our annual report. It didn't make it to council. Somewhere
It's going to sound.
floating around, but it'll come for the next
Chris, the
meeting.
question was, are you planning to present or just make it part of the packet or?
Whatever. It's probably good to do a little presentation. We got a lot of information in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is, when's your next meeting?
Next Monday.
Okay.
And the advantage of you reporting is that it's at the top of the meeting, not,
Right.
they won't stick it under my name at the end.
Okay, I'll do it.
The updates, right? Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
The next thing is Nebby. So Ernie, do you want to give us some?
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So I went back to Anthony and I shared some of the feedback that we got last month. And he is meeting on March 4th with Paul and Denise Pulio, to kind of get their reaction to, the design as it is, and with, particular with the style of the dress. And he likes the style of the dress. So I'm just waiting to hear back from him after March 4th, and then we'll kind of decide the next step with that. But I shared the feedback. We're still at 64,000. We've hit a little bit of a plateau with the fundraising. So if anybody has any ideas, let us know. I mean, we still have quite a few things out there. Chris and I are going to meet with NovaCure on Friday, and so we have a lot of things out there, but we love to attract some new donations soon. And I think and Chris is working on the contract with legal.
Yeah.
So I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
I have an update, Ernie, just, I think, based on where we're going to be in relation to the shoreline, there'll be a New Hampshire Environmental NHES permit, or I'm not even sure what it's called, but it's
Right.
it's about yay thick.
Yeah,
We have to demonstrate no impact
Yeah.
to the shoreline. So I'll keep that in my tickler.
well, that'll give us another 3 years to raise funds.
Yeah.
This take, I thought that, if I remember that we did gain authority Portsmouth gained a certain kind of authority where, we are able to, fast track some things for shoreline protection.
I will look into that.
Okay.
So is can the location of it, if it was moved, I don't know, 4 feet back or 5
Oh,
feet?
no, it's within,
It's
like within
200.
it's 100 or, so
It's
we'd have to move it into the road or
to move to
something.
the Alcor.
Yeah,
Hey,
Did we do that for Endeavor?
yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
Mhm.
but so the same one doesn't count?
but it's
Oh.
literally location specific.
Okay.
it's
Sorry,
one of those
I
sort
didn't
of,
mean to say it like that.
yeah.
So is that something that the city is working on, or is that something we should be working on?
That is something the city will have to work on as part of being the owner of said piece when it's installed.
Okay. This goes on my long list for DPW, I think.
Yeah.
Anything else for Nebby? Yeah, Jennifer Smith in legal has all the information. She's working on the contract. We do have enough money to do this phase of the contract, so, as soon as that's done. And, Ernie, I think the maquette that is being done right now, didn't you say that it's almost finished?
Yes, I believe it's almost finished, but I think it might even be finished because he's showing it March 4th. And so that's going to be a key date, I think.
Okay.
Where is it being shown, Ernie?
I think they're going to a studio.
To the Puyos.
The Puglios are going to be viewing it.
Oh, that's right.
And
Yes, know something after that.
And I'm sure if anybody wants, but we can talk about that later. I mean, I'm sure any of us could go view it.
Heather,
we
are you up
should.
to speed on the Nebby?
No.
I didn't think so.
Okay.
Just gonna Google it later. Ask Kate.
It's our next, we can send you a little packet of information. It's our next sculpture for Bohinkel Park, which is based on a native legend, an Abenaki.
Oh, maybe I
legend.
did see that. Is it someone with the arms raised?
Yes, yes.
So the difference with this one is this group has the ability to raise money. So versus other things that are paid for through Percent for Art or donated, this is a fundraising effort to create this.
And we have 64,000 out of how much do we need?
Oh, that's about
123.
Yeah.
We kind of kicked it off quietly in late August.
So speaking of funds, we're looking at a couple of grant opportunities. We have to know more before we can tell you anything definitively, but the Portsmouth Garden Club does put out requests for projects, and we're interested and we need to talk with DPW about this, in some landscaping for Serenity. So purchasing some plants for that area that would, of course, be appropriate for the spot that would be, New Hampshire native plants. And the garden club was kind of enthused about that. And Ernie and I thought a partnership with the garden club and interest of the garden club would be great to cultivate for any of our sculptures, because they really need, they all need some kind of landscaping and some beautification in the setting. And then we're not sure if we should or could, we could, but not sure if we should apply for a Moose Plate grant, because the city also applies for Moose Plate grants to digitize records, and we'd be competing in the same area. I'm going to find out from them if they get enough requests that, in fact, that would limit competition.
Because I think it falls in the same.
It falls in the
bucket.
same bucket.
Right. I know we just got the maximum amount, the last allocation.
Yeah.
for This grant.
Chris, what would we want a moose plate
Well,
for?
There,
And that goes on card.
No,
Yeah.
money,
money,
get
we'd want money. And
funds from the sale of.
what Ernie and I, in looking at the grants, thought, and we're open to everybody's ideas, therefore access to public art. That's one category. So you can't use it to buy, to create, or to install, but you can increase access. So we were thinking that it could go for signage, those Cabot Lyfords where it never had signage, that we could, it doesn't cost a lot of money, but each of those signs is $800, $900. So for signage, and that we could also use it to, how we've wanted to create, do technology for a walking tour, that we could engage a firm to take the information that we have and do a walking tour. So we're interested in both of those possibilities. And this year, the Moose grants go up to $30,000.
That's good.
So the town sells them and then we get them.
The state collects the money from the plates all over the
License
state.
plates.
License plates. And
Son of the
Yeah,
New
yeah,
Hampshire,
yeah.
yeah.
And they make that available for natural and cultural resource grants that municipalities can apply for.
Figured I saw us setting up a kiosk, sort of hawking them, and whoever wants to buy a moose.
Jen,
Chris, just as a thought, do we have all the money that we need for the bench? And is that accessible? Would that be accessibility?
oh, that's an interesting idea. The nice thing is, they give you a person that you can, and they encourage you to email the person with ideas, and they'll tell you whether it's
No.
a legit idea or not. But that's an excellent idea. And that would not cost as much as we're talking.
I would love to see some signage around town that had like a QR code linked to the tour to public art locations in the community. Because it's nice to think that people will find an app, but usually they'll do that because they see a piece of art and they'll go, oh, I love this. And then if they see a little QR code, see the map of art, public art, then that would help significantly.
Okay. So we've got some good ideas we can test out anyway. And those are due later in March. And if we don't get it this year, they come up by usually twice a year as grant rounds. One other thing on an update, just for people to know about, the master plan open house, April 22nd, the community campus. Now, I've been on the advisory committee, and I believe so far, most of what the master plan is about outlying areas, which is actually great because, I think we all know that the downtown gets a lot of attention and the neighborhoods don't. And a lot of it is about connectivity of different gateway areas, paths, but there's sensitivity to the interest in Portsmouth with our historical and cultural life, but I haven't actually seen yet any specifics that relate to that. So coming to that open house and engaging around some of this would be, I think, helpful for all of us, to give some ideas.
And there's a survey online,
Online survey, if you want to fill that in, right?
which to get you all up, there was the original survey, what would you like to see? And then a lot of data collection by the consultant for 6 months, 8 months. They started to distill that down and they've put out a draft vision and goals.
Right.
So this second survey is your all's reaction to what they're saying, they're hearing, and how they're crafting that. So it's not final, but it's a draft vision and goals for the master plan. So please take it and tell your friends to take it.
Is that on the city side?
It sure is.
Okay.
If you could go to the website and go to master plan, it brings it to its own page. And it should remind you when the public meeting is, when the consultant will be on site.
Ernie, I want to call on you again to talk about number 5, our launch of the RFP.
Sure. So everybody should have received the email, announcing that applications were open for the P&H 400 Education and Public Art Trust.
Let's check. Did you all get that?
Mhm.
You did. You did. Heather, you probably didn't. We'll forward that to you.
Yeah, good. So, the deadline is April 15th. Thanks to Jen, and I know Lenny helped a lot with pulling together the list. It includes a lot of college faculty, nonprofits, art associations, individual artists. The only area where I felt we were, could develop more was public school art teachers. And I have a couple of requests out for that to see if I can get some help with that. So that's good. I haven't received any questions yet. We have that all set up, so questions will come through to Stephanie. And no questions yet. And just please share with people that you think might be interested in this. I mean, it really is a great opportunity. The grants are up to $10,000. And it really needs to be something that connects with educating K through 12 students in Portsmouth and public art. So you can be kind of creative about it. Let me see. Was there anything else? I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions on that?
And this is a separate trust that was set up, that it was given to us to manage.
From money from the P&H 400 that was left over from the celebration.
And this is our launch. We haven't done this before. Ernie did a beautiful job of setting up the application and the guidelines. I think it's a great model for anything that we might do like this before. It feels to me it's very user friendly, should be really easy to fill in.
Well, shout out to Stephanie Secord. She really helped a lot with that. And also Linda Schmidt from Clipper Foundation provided some great feedback.
Okay.
So we'll give it a try. I mean, we'll see what kind of response we get. And it's not, if we don't get any response, we'll just kind of revisit and see, what we could have done better. But I think we'll get some response.
Well, it just seemed when we had the flash vote, I mean, I know we're going to talk about that later, but there was a lot of people that kept talking about local artists, use local artists, use local artists. Here's the perfect opportunity for some nice, a nice cash. So I think that we can push that to say we are engaging local artists.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it yet, but I know Stephanie has developed a press release. And I think it will go out in the city's newsletter. I haven't seen those yet, but that should also help to stir up some interest.
I think she was going to send that out later this week, and I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So April 15th is the due date. And, we are the group along with Christine Fries from the library to review whatever comes in. So I was thinking that we've said to people we would make a decision by May 15th. So that we might use our April 29th meeting. We might extend that meeting a little bit. Do a shorter business meeting and use the rest of it to review what we get for applications and make a decision if we can at that time. I know it's hard for people to start earlier, so perhaps we could plan to go to like 7:30 and dedicate most of the meeting to that. We can bring snacks like we did before and do it in a non-public executive session. Actually, I'll make sure. Ernie, do you want to let Christine Fries know about that so that we get that on her calendar? And, if we're getting a number of things ahead of time, we can do a smaller group can just make sure that they fit the criteria so that what we're reviewing on the 29th are actual all legitimate. If anybody has a question or asks you a question, remember that happened before. There is a process, there's an online process to put in a question, and it says that in the application. And Ernie will monitor those, and with Stephanie, they'll post the answers for everybody. And it says that right in the model.
Was
So-
the RFP advertised on or promoted on like the City of Portsmouth website on Facebook?
Not yet. I think, Ernie, you said that's all coming later this week.
Yeah, Stephanie said later this week she was going to be sending out the press release, and I'm sure I'll keep an eye on that and make sure she does. But I'm sure she's planning on that. And it is on the park website. If you go to the park website, it's right at the top.
Okay, Nora and Lenny, what do you have for us?
Well, we, I guess we decided we were going to get together and talk about how we're going to get the space going, because it's actually not like put up an exhibition, oh, great. We've just, easy peasy, although when I was walking up, I thought, yeah, if we were a bunch of radicals in the 60s or 70s, it wouldn't be a problem at all, but
Heather, we've been asked to do a rotating exhibit of art in the
So-
City Hall.
Okay.
So
City Hall
I
lobby.
went back to the considerations that I guess you pulled together, Chris, from
From our discussion.
conversation back in the spring, and that was our starting point. And I think Lenny and I think the easiest thing, you distributing, we prepared two different documents. Lenny really wrote up our conversation about process, is how I looked at it. I mean, very specific, with really, very good protocol suggestions. And we also took the old list, which I guess I should have had got. Sort of played off it. It's played off it for considerations, which is what you're seeing when it says considerations for City Hall art exhibits. Because some of the things that there were some questions that we had considered and some answers that seemed to have been evolved and some that we thought were not that relevant. So,
In reading the two documents, there is some redundancy because the original one that says consideration for exhibits, Mara and I had a long conversation and went back and forth with a few emails. Mandela Pruitt from New Hampshire Art Association, is no longer with on staff of NHAA, but she's a member and wishes to remain part of our group, and she's
Right, and one thing we.
She wasn't at the meeting, so, but
Right, she wasn't at that meeting. But one thing, the question that absolutely raises, and one of the first points that we both felt that was that we need more than 2 or 3 people to be doing this. So either from this committee or kind of like someone, other people from the community, perhaps.
so the second handout that says discussion points, I don't know what and I did a lot of cut and pasting, so it probably needs a little editing, but it's like how to create the regional space, we need a fair protocol so that when artists come in and say they want to be in the exhibit, like what's our protocol? Like, do we jury them? We want to make sure the work is according to our standards that are already established. What we look for in public art. Encourage diversity of 2D media at this point. And then number 3 is really, very kind of nuts and bolts of how do you hang an exhibit, you put out the call for art. We need to establish first a calendar. Mara and I went back and forth. Originally, we said 3 exhibits a year. I said, no, let's do quarterly. 3 months is a great opportunity.
We disagree on that one.
And we had a little bit of a discussion about, at one point there, maybe on the first sheet, considerations for art, it says something about school art. And I kind of said, well, the library does Splash, which it's their thing, and they've been doing it for years. And to repeat it here, having been a public school teacher teaching art, like to have to put on 2 shows while you're also doing scholastic art shows, it seems like they're not gonna wanna do it, I think. And to have it right down the hill and then move it up here, sort of, I think. I would eliminate that. So we need to decide on dates and how many shows a year. Do we need a focus or a theme, or will it be just the artist's best choice of their own best work? Once we establish a calendar, we'll have the dates like drop off, hanging, takedown dates. Then we have to publicize a call to art to a pre-selected group. Well, not pre-selected, select group that we're trying to focus on Portsmouth or Seacoast artists. They have to either live in Portsmouth or have their studio in Portsmouth, but have a strong Portsmouth roots connection. And so, like, how do we go about doing that? And then we will publicize the date that they have to submit by, some sample pieces, which can be done digitally. The date we notify them that we've accepted their work for this particular show, and thank the other artists who didn't have room for in this show, but try again. And then how is the exhibit going to be hung? So number 3D is specific to that. I think one of our groups, either myself, Mara, Mandela, perhaps a new member, needs to be present at all those events, like drop off. I can have hung many shows, and Mandela as well. Would need to be there so that the drop off is smooth and the work is secure. Hanging takes pretty much almost a whole day to hang the show. And then we talked about 3E having a binder, since we're not going to actively sell. There's not going to be a desk with somebody selling, but there will be a binder with artist statements and contact information, and we'll have a place for business cards. And then the takedown date, typically, at least in galleries, and the way I'd like to see it work is the day that exhibit A is coming down, people who have been selected for exhibit B would be dropping off on the same day. And then following day is hanging day, and it just keeps rolling like clockwork. And then the last is publicity and communication with media. Decide what our protocol is going to be. We'll coordinate with the city, Stephanie Secord and Monty, put it in the city newsletter, on the city website, the park website, maybe send promotional material of who are the artists in this show, send it to Seacoast Online. And then the artists should contact their list of clients and publicize it on their own social media. So it's kind of like
So-
very technical.
Reading all this, a suggestion.
Yeah.
Pilot one time. Don't worry about how it's gonna be for all time. I think it's great that you have that, but treat the first one as a pilot.
Okay, when you say that,
Well, we're gonna learn so much from the first one, right? Do people want to exhibit in City Hall? How does the call reach, how well does it reach people? Do we get take up for publicity? Do we get good response from the public coming in? So I don't know if you need to worry about, I mean, later we can worry about this, but maybe even publicize the first one as a pilot to
Okay.
artists, that, so that we don't have to know everything. Because I do think we'll learn a lot after the first one.
And there was a particular artist, and this is being publicly, excuse me, publicly recorded. I'm not gonna say the artist's name, but someone who we've had contact with, who has presented beautiful art. And when I spoke to this person and said, there's gonna be more opportunity, they said, well, how are we supposed to know? I said, well, it's on the website, it's in the city newsletter. And they said, well, how are we supposed to read all that stuff? Like, how I was sort of like,
But entrepreneurial.
To help you.
Yes,
I'm
I mean-
gonna knock on everybody's door. I mean,
but we, as much publicity as we can, and remember, we have room for 8 to 10 pieces.
it
Maybe.
depends on size,
It
like we
depends on
discussed.
size, but
Right.
that room handles a lot of people, a lot of time, so we have to be, I think, thoughtful about not putting too much in there, just from a protection standpoint.
Yeah, we had discussion about, do we want to hang it salon style or museum
Yeah.
style, all
Yes.
those sort of technical
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, Kate.
One of the things you could relieve some pressure on you too is if you didn't hang as many shows in a year, do the pilot, but also partner with the library on one show a year and let them hang here, because the library owns the public art collection that the city of Portsmouth has that doesn't get hung very often, that's sitting in storage. So giving them an opportunity to exhibit their favorite pieces for one of those shows
oh, good idea.
might, so we maybe get a rotation of things we don't see.
That idea.
I like that idea.
I think the most challenging thing you've raised is about jurying.
Mhm.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about how that should happen?
Well, I mean, first you have to establish, do they live in, they have to fill out, and I'm not gonna hire a private investigator, but if they live or work in Portsmouth.
Well,
And-
remember, we talked about originally Seacoast.
Seacoast,
Right,
So-
right.
and that's
But I
what we're
thought-
questioning.
Yeah.
I
So we
think in the
said-
first,
Yeah,
in
so,
our first point, that maybe it should be the seacoast.
so we said seacoast, and then how do you define seacoast? Well, you have to literally live on the water, or do you go as far north as Dover? I mean, like, where do we end?
Yeah,
Well,
but when
you
it's
know-
seacoast, I looked it up after we had that conversation, and
I
the
did too.
seacoast is not considered water. It's considered a
The region.
geographic
And
area.
You could use the region that New Hampshire Charitable does, the 7 town areas that comprise Seacoast,
17?
some in Maine and some in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
Right,
let's
so
use
figure
that.
Kittery, Elliott, Maine.
We have an official definition from the surveys the AFTA survey of the greater Portsmouth area, which is not just, it doesn't go as far as the whole seacoast, but it's Portsmouth and like Kittery,
It's Rye.
Newton and Rye. So it's a little bit more geographically compact,
Yeah.
which maybe is the direction you want to go, because you
More
don't.
than that definition.
Then if you go whole
of
seacoast, you could end up with artists from Seabrook and
Sure.
Kingston and
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
people
I started
consider
looking
that
at it, but,
seacoast.
okay, the seacoast goes all the way to Seabrook, and
Right.
then do we include Great Bay?
yeah, so it starts getting, I think, too big of an area. You're gonna get a lot of submissions, and then suddenly you're gonna have issues with, we chose all artists that don't live in Portsmouth.
Right.
So I think if you greater Portsmouth,
Narrow it.
One of that was, and one of our points in discussing that point, this issue is, should the first show perhaps be limited to Portsmouth? To literal Portsmouth, or maybe you're saying but one could perhaps do it more limited than we ultimately could.
Or you
reach.
could simply say in your call a preference for Portsmouth artists or artists who have a studio or gallery in Portsmouth.
And I mean, I'd like to kind of go through some of the discussion that we had with this, which were, for instance, the next point about rotating 3 or 4 times a year. It's a disagreement.
But why don't you see what it takes to do one? And then that'll help you to know whether you want
2
to,
days work.
yeah. But I mean, in terms of attracting artists, I don't mean just the hanging of it. I mean, attracting, getting the jury, making the decisions, getting the publicity. And that'll give you an
That's
idea
more than 2 days work.
of how you want to do it.
I asked, do you want me to ask the Arts and Cultural Commission meets on the 16th of next month? I can ask if there's anyone on that committee that would like to volunteer to serve on.
That's a good question.
That-
That would be
Yeah.
useful.
That would be great.
And I think that one point that we came up with, actually, when the 4 of us were standing in that space during our first meeting back in November, was that it really couldn't, at this point, accommodate anything other than 2-dimensional art. I mean,
Yeah.
you could not have any furniture or sculpture. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I went up to the Curran Museum to see the New Hampshire League of Craftsmen show, which was fabulous. Usadesca, a gentleman had working on it, I forget his name, he's been working on it for 10 years and it's not
Oh, yeah,
finished yet.
it's
It's just amazing the way the drawers pop out and open up and look like books and play music. I mean, it's just like incredible, but like where could you put it?
Yeah. No, we have to respect what we have for space there.
and that, I think that we really agree that the art can't be for sale on the city property.
Right,
That's a-
we know
that's a
that.
no-no.
Yeah,
Well, okay, so thinking as an artist, it can be, I thought it could be, we're not going to sell it,
that's right.
but if someone could contact the
Sure,
artist and
sure,
say,
Sure,
I'd like to buy that from
of
you.
course.
And then I put that the artist, in my thoughts, how it would work is that once an artist hangs it in the show, someone could say, I'm gonna buy it, give them a deposit or whatever, but they can't take it down and leave a hole in the wall. Like, once it's hanging in the show, it has to stay up for the
Yeah,
duration of the show.
Unless there's some unusual
There's
circumstance.
some really unusual circumstances, they could replace it with a same size piece.
Yeah.
Someone's here from California and they're buying it for a wedding and just have to have it that day.
So if people want to read these at their leisure and if you have any input, some thoughts, like Kate, your thought about presenting it to that would be really good. We're having another meeting and it will be with Mandela, and I think it's next week already.
Yeah, next week.
So
What's Mandela's last name?
Pruitt, Pruett, I think.
PRU.
PRU.
You double check that. I have her on the contact.
I like the idea of potentially, if you were to try one to make it focus on Portsmouth or Portsmouth located artists, that helps you to bound it a little bit. And I wonder if there's a theme that could also help you to bound it a little,
Yeah,
you know,
we
for the first one, so that
talked about.
that there's a reasonable there's a reasonable limit that you're not getting hundreds of things to take a look at, that you've bounded it enough that you get a good selection, but it doesn't take you forever.
So
to
art,
carry it.
can be anything from obviously abstract. I mean, there's fabric art, there's
Right, but I think,
but
but a theme, I see in here the idea of a theme that would help give a cohesion to what this is about.
right. So
And-
we certainly want to not necessarily censor art, because art is supposed to be thought provoking and use your critical thinking, your imagination, but do we want to say no nudes because families might walk through, or not want to say that?
I just
What
think,
about political art?
I think if you just say appropriate for public space, you know, and let the artist decide. I mean, you don't worry about that in a museum.
No, but I
And
know.
this is a public space.
But you're saying that we
Space,
need a
yeah.
concept to.
Well, I
to
think if you
focus
had
it
a
around.
concept that might help to, it'll help in your call for artists. And
Yeah, I
it'll
think
help
so.
to help you to not be inundated with just, you know, such a broad.
We have a birthday coming up.
We're doing a project,
was
Arts and
thinking-
Cultural Commission with the Poet Laureate Program, the Public Poetry Project. What we're telling people is submit poems that a 7-year-old can read. Because
That
they'll be
said
in,
what, Kate?
submit poems that a 7-year-old can read because they'll be in windows in a public space, right? So, you know, anything you're comfortable with a 7-year-old seeing is probably okay.
Interesting idea.
That's interesting.
Because, and that's what happens at City Hall. We have a lot of kids that come in for awards or various things, so.
So do you feel you've got good info for
Yes.
next
Yeah,
meeting?
I think I think if we start and emphasize our first show, pick a theme for the first show and a preference for Portsmouth artists.
For Portsmouth artists, yeah.
Yeah.
The first one, because they've been
And I think that,
champing at the bit.
and I think that as Chris enunciated, it makes it, if we call it if we call it to ourselves a pilot,
To yourself.
it's a trial run. It can
Right.
be any, we can see it's a dismal failure and we really don't want to do it that way. And, I mean, that's the worst case, but if we can see what works and what doesn't, and then move on from that and, not feel like, we've made a really horrible mistake because we don't have to do it the same way again.
Cities do love pilots.
Yeah,
Municipalities love pilots.
right.
Pilots are good.
It's true.
Pilots.
And you
Not the
could,
airplane.
so
Pilot
the artists, how things went, what would have made it easier,
Yeah,
their suggestions. So you have that chance to.
I can't imagine we won't be inundated because artists are putting the work in, like Series Bakery,
Right.
But that's why the
all
whole
over it.
theme
Yeah.
keeps you keeps you
Yeah.
focused because
Oh, every art association I belong to, every month is a theme.
Yeah.
Which actually personally I don't like, but.
But I think you focus, I mean, the theme is really, I think what Chris is trying to say is
Right.
focus that theme,
Yeah,
not like
really
flowers
focus it.
or, butterflies or whatever. You're focused on that.
And think of this as a municipality and, I
As a
was just.
what?
Well, this is a municipality, so what's a theme that's appropriate to a municipality?
History
mean-
of Portsmouth,
Oh,
the seacoast
water
area.
and sewer, which would be a really interesting.
Civics 101.
Something that really allows people to get creative, but that connects somehow to, we're in City Hall. Maybe it's about something, maybe it's about housing, one of the number one issues that the city is dealing with. Or,
Mhm.
or public safety, or something that, lets people really imagine.
Yeah, I like that
I was
idea.
also gonna say something, it's like the 250th anniversary of the country, maybe something tied in with that.
At Portsmouth in the Revolution. I know that we're gonna get a lot of that through Strawberry Bank and a lot of other groups, but we might have a particular take on that. That's from a town perspective.
Okay, these are all good thoughts. I'm glad that thank you for talking about it with us, because we had a very, very intense and engaging conversation. That was very good.
We get along fine.
But it was,
That's why you want a referee on the
we
committee.
wanted to have it kind of like sorted. Good, thank you, folks.
Good, okay, flash vote. I know some of you have had a chance to delve into it. Does anybody need a printout of?
Oh,
Sean
yes,
makes-
please.
It was great.
So, oh, I'll print this off. It's one thing.
Good results.
So how many
It's
pages
15
it was?
pages.
Share.
I know. I downloaded
Put
it.
it share.
So.
Thanks, John.
I came in, it's in the middle.
And if we get a certain number of people.
And then, yeah, no.
It's a significant number. And then we use
I
the
think,
results.
First of all, I thanked Monty for giving us this idea and allowing us to do this because I think it's given us so much information that we can really play off of for a long time. I don't know if people had reactions, if you've had a chance to take a look at it. Jen?
I have a couple, just one question for Sean, I think. How many people usually?
Oh, I know that it's about 380.
So we actually got more.
Well, the last flash vote had a little bit less than this, so,
Okay,
I mean,
so that's it. So it's,
I think
what I
it's-
didn't know was the sampling. Was that a good sampling
Think
of
so.
people? So it was a good sampling.
Yeah.
The people love that Wailing Wall.
didn't they?
They just, I kept seeing it come up and up and up and up. There's certainly one Donald Trump lover in this group. He came up.
How did Nancy Pearson take this?
And they
Yeah.
love murals.
They love murals.
Yeah,
And they love the murals and they want to keep it local artists.
yeah.
I mean, that's what of all the takeaways that I got, those were the 3 takeaways I got.
I thought the city manager did a really nice job of summarizing the flash vote when she presented. And Monty sent that to us. I don't know, did everybody get that or?
I don't think so.
No.
Why don't
Yeah,
you, yeah, this summer.
Oh, the summer.
yeah, I could read a little bit, because I thought it was really a great summary. They said a clear majority rates public art as very or extremely important. There is an especially strong interest in murals and visible downtown placements. Comment themes show enthusiasm for local artists. That was super clear. History forward storytelling and kid-friendly or interactive pieces. And then the last thing was there were recurring concerns about costs, upkeep, and the fit of specific recent installations.
Yeah. So I think Ernie also did a tally of when people said their favorite pieces. The African Burying Ground, the whale in Prescott Park, the murals that we had in the past. The codfish, some things that come up. The end of it.
I saw the cod from I-95 this weekend,
It's very cool.
driving back from Maine. I was like, whoa. I mean, I saw the light. I don't know.
Yeah.
Eyesight.
Yeah.
It was like blue. I was like, that's so cool.
Has anyone been out there since Monday? I was worried
Yeah,
about
it
Monday.
was. It's fun.
Okay, good.
Do you know the cod?
Oh, my.
You're talking about the
God.
Hecko Gateway Park?
Yes.
No,
The-
Swinging Fish?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the
I'm
shoal
a
of
little thrown
cod.
off because you call it codfish, singular.
They are
Okay,
the shoal cod on a school level,
okay.
and it's about 40 of them. They
Yes,
were created
it's
by
beautiful.
both.
Yeah, no, I definitely know. I didn't know connect it with the name immediately, but
Yeah.
now it's.
So in a contemplative moment, we could sit and read all the small. print.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I looked
because
at it also, I was between meetings.
there'll be,
Didn't
I
see
think
that,
this
any of the
is, it's
subtle
good to
stuff.
have a copy because this is something we can kind of go fast.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was pleased about, because, I do service for a living, and I know Ernie and I were both concerned when Monty raised this, and he showed us from some other communities that had done this, and sometimes these surveys tend to just draw a whole lot of negative emotion of different kinds. In fact, the master plan survey had a lot of negative, just general negativity. If people just use it as a place to, put junk in like they do on Facebook. And there was almost none of that here, really none of it. So I think we've got good information. It was really highly positive. So that leads me into the High Hanover discussion and a question of whether with this information, you think we have enough ideas to put out the RFP for the garage. Remember for Pierce Island, we did public listening sessions, we did presentations. But now we've just asked almost 400 people what they think.
Mhm.
And they like murals. And about the garage specifically, they like inside or outside murals or sculpture. And we have this, you know, the history, the storytelling. We have a lot of signals here, I think, about what we could put in an RFP. And I guess the question is, do you think that's enough of a framing that we can go forward with that, or that we should do some more specific sessions about what people want to see in the garage?
Question, there is an awful lot of, I mean, I haven't read the small print because it just hit my inbox this afternoon. I was in the middle of some artwork, but I think there's a wealth of information in there. I don't know what else you ask specifically about the garage.
Yeah.
400 people is more than show up at listening sessions. Right?
Yes, yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Significantly.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable using this information to be able to do that, because to your point, you know, this is far more than we ever showed up at our listening sessions.
Sure. Sure, good. Then would you think that we could go forward with just maybe using the parameters of like the choices on the garage of, as they said, one or more of these mural inside, an outdoor mural on a brick wall, or a sculpture on the outside of a garage, something like that.
Yep.
And let the artists propose to us. I mean, I think it's, you know, we have 64,000 and change for this. And we'd like to save a little of that for maintenance. So if we said like 60,000. What's on your mind?
No, I was just thinking that somewhere the word has to get out to the public that these projects are paid for by percent for art. And, you know, we're not taking this away from needy citizens, the money, the
Right.
funds away from needy citizens, that which it's a boon.
And then this money is from what, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah.
It's
I think
been
we-
sitting for a while.
Yeah.
So the parking garage is there. It's been there for years and years.
It's
but
been
being
redone.
It was just
It
redone
was
for the last
redone.
3 years.
Right, okay,
And that's the redoing it triggers this
I see,
opportunity.
okay. Is there art there now? Public art in the garage? Okay.
Do we have a deadline?
No,
So there's no deadline that we have to.
no, I think we had invited DPW to come to this meeting, but they're out straight with, you know, snow and.
Right.
So we do need to have them talk with us about, you know, obviously they manage the garage, own the garage. We do want to hear about any limitations that they want us to put on it before we actually hit the street with an RFP.
I'm particularly curious about the electrical boxes, which are pretty significant on the property.
That's a potential thing someone could.
Yeah, because they sit right in front of the garage,
Yeah.
near the bus stop.
Yeah.
So they're in a
Be a
prominent
mural.
location. What?
A mural space there.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of get 2 for 1. It's a sculpture and a mural.
yeah.
We own those? Are
No.
those ours or
That's
those?
my question.
No,
I,
I've gone through.
Those
this.
aren't those.
You have to get permission from public service,
Source.
Eversource.
we own some of them in the city, not all of them. The
And
ones that
those.
sit next to intersections are usually our electrical controls for the intersection, so we do own those.
Yeah, but
We
no,
don't own the big
not the
transformers.
big ones.
Yeah.
It's not out of the question. Before Eversource was taken over, when it used to be public service, they were more friendly toward that type of thing. But you know, you, just like shoreline protection, you go through the process. I mean, murals, $60,000 is gonna be hard for people to do any of the kind of wonderful things that we saw in the photos that we looked at last time.
I was just wondering about the mural on the Black Heritage Trail.
Yes.
So how much is that? What was? what-
40,000.
Really? That's a very,
The expense there, a lot of it is on the panels because they're not painting directly on, and we probably would want to do a similar thing, not paint on that brick on the outside. But remember, a very inexpensive way to do this is like the Ruth Blay was done, because that's printed on Tyvek. That's not painted.
What was done? I missed that. I'm sorry.
It's printed on Tyvek material, the Ruth Blay mural. Are you familiar?
it's on Court Street.
Okay.
And the Liar's Bench is done the same way. They're printed and they can be reprinted, so they're less expensive and they have a long life potential. So, you know, but the expense on the trail house is the panel system.
Right,
Because
Okay.
again, they don't want to paint on the brick.
right. And it makes it much more uniform.
Right.
But I mean, on the garage, anyway, I just was wondering because that makes a mural sounds more affordable.
Yes,
What's wrong with painting on the
For
brick?
our
Is it
budget.
durability?
it's durability. Also, I believe we will have to go through HDC
If you're outside.
if we're outside the garage, and I know they will not want us to paint on brick. But the other thing to remember is the garage is an all brick. There's also concrete.
Okay.
The good thing is I'm the new HTC rep for
Oh,
the city
great.
council, so
Yay.
I will remind them that they have no control over color and paint. So,
And design.
yeah, they don't, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Very authoritarian, right?
we can start,
Perfect.
if with this, we can start drafting, we will want DPW to be a part of it, but what I'd love if we could do would be actually be looking at be at our next meeting, which would allow us to, I looked up what we did before. We gave 6 weeks from the announcement to the completion, and then we notified a month later. So if we were ready to go out, let's say in April, you know, we'd be looking at notifying 1st of June, something like that, and making a decision in June. That would still give people, if they wanted to get started, some summer months to be able to work on something.
Is the garage itself done at this
Yes.
point?
It's completely done.
Chris.
Yeah.
So a question that I can't recall who asked me very energetically. Why we don't restrict RFPs to local artists? And I didn't know if there was a reason we can't or
Well,
don't.
think about this. We have maybe 2 or 3 mural artists in Portsmouth, for example. So we'd get a limited pool. And what I always say to artists when we do that, would you like to be restricted from not applying to any other thing in the country and only things that occur in your own community?
Okay, so it's not a rule, it's a norm,
It's a norm.
good practice.
It's why the state council, for example, with their percent for art, doesn't restrict it to New Hampshire artists.
Okay,
It's kind of considered an excellence criteria that you're working to criteria.
thank you for that appropriate response.
I think it's really important to help people understand, some of the complaints I've heard is that, well, I'll never get to do a sculpture like you're asking for. You're asking for $150,000 sculpture. I'll never get to that level because I can't get the experience to get to that level. So what's great is that the committee is now approaching some projects that are smaller And this gives people an entry opportunity to build a portfolio. And we have more artists, local artists that can qualify to do
Right. Right.
$60,000 mural or sculpture project than we do who can do those big projects. So
Okay.
hopefully this helps build capacity.
That reminds me, NEFA has just put out on their website a 6-week free course for artists to become public artists who want to expand their practice. And I think maybe the other art committee could really publicize that because
Eva?
New England Foundation for the Arts.
Yeah.
Because for the reason that you said, Kate, for people to be able to build their practice.
It's hard if you don't have a portfolio of public art. How do you start building a portfolio
right.
of public art?
And, you know, I love Terrence. I love Terrence's work. I've known Terrence since he first came to this community. But what if all of our work in Portsmouth was only by Terrence?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be what a world-class city would want. We'd want that variety.
And I just wanted to remind everybody that Nebby is a local artist. Anthony Alamani is from South Berwick, Maine.
Here were the requirements. Wait, just one more thing that we had last time. See if you think this is still what we should be asking for. If it's, I mean, you all read proposals, if it's too much, if it's not enough. We asked for a 3-page written concept, a sketch or a representation of what they proposed. Didn't have to be fancy. An item line budget, an estimated timeline, up to 5 examples of work they've done, a list of references, and resume.
Did we call it a sketch?
We used a sketch, a representation, a drawing. We used a couple of schematic, right? Because remember, we didn't know what art form was coming before us. A model, you know.
Can I just say one thing? I think a 3-page written concept is a lot. Maybe to say no more than 3 pages.
Yeah.
Because I think if I saw a 3-page written concept, I'd feel like I needed to fill that in, and that's a lot of text.
It's a little
Yeah.
daunting.
I think we did say no more than, and I think a number of them were just single pages, I remember. Just a very straightforward.
And I guess the reason I asked about sketch is that I think that, how can I say it? It was more, I mean, I looked at what we got as more concept, not maybe concept drawing or a concept. I mean, it was a sketch. I mean, I'm not an artist, so perhaps I look at it differently. But a sketch to me seems like a sort of casual sort of, and we really weren't. We looked at things that were more sophisticated than that, or sophisticated maybe isn't the right word, but more explicit.
Developed.
They were more developed.
Yeah.
More developed, more explicitly developed than the way I would consider a sketch.
I think, you know, what, the more, as people is natural, the more developed ones are more competitive typically.
I mean, that's what we found, I thought.
Though remember that one that withdrew, that was just a sketch that we were all taken with, and I think would have made it to the finals, but withdrew, but that was a simple sketch, but it was a very strong concept.
Yeah, but it was right, it was this the concept was
strong
quite
concept.
clear and strong, I thought.
Use the word drawing or
Yeah.
you use the word drawing instead of a sketch. Sounds like something on a paper napkin, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess
But a
that's my
drawing sounds a little more.
prejudice.
Yeah, I think it's semantics.
Yeah. But the idea I think we wanted to convey is you don't need to have built the thing. But we need some visual sense of what you're proposing.
But most of them, the last time, I don't remember that many hand sketches.
No, just a couple.
Just a couple. I mean, most of them were all computer generated, so that sort of takes it out of the sketch aspect of it.
That was a big piece.
It was a big piece. It was more expensive and it was,
True.
it didn't lend itself to a mural. It was going to necessarily be 3D. So people are okay with us starting to like get this going then.
Sounds exciting.
Especially if the garage is finished.
Yeah, and maybe DPW can come to our next meeting
Yeah,
and see if we can.
yeah, and I think any sooner, I'll say, you and I start engaging DPW directly, eye to eye, would be good, but they need to get through there.
They need to get through the snow.
Yeah.
We all do.
Is there gonna be a rededication of the parking garage at any point? Like, do they do that?
I've not heard any language like that. I wouldn't expect, I would not
Yeah.
expect it.
Yeah.
People are pretty happy it's done, at
Yeah.
least the business community.
Yeah.
Might be nice to have a press release saying it's done.
Well,
I should tell it. I don't know if
we have a
everybody knows
communications
it's
department.
done.
We have a communications department.
Well, the public art can serve for that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
once we've done that.
That'll
To
be
celebrate the
dedication.
completion.
Now it's
Yeah.
really complete.
Yes.
That's
Public
super
art.
complete.
With dedication, yeah.
Okay. Next meeting, it feels like it's a long time from now, March 25th. So expect some information between now and then about the visit of the Italian artist for sure. And then probably we'll try to get a draft out to you using the same format that we did for the last RFP, just plugging in this new information. And now we have a new system
We do.
for procurements at City Hall. So things should go a lot easier.
We're away from the manual process.
Right. So things will be online. We can have things online.
Yeah.
We'll be in a better process. And I'd invite, we have a public comment. Would you like to comment or?
I'm learning a lot. I am born in Newington and
Do you want to come up to the table?
I can.
Nice things.
Come up.
I'm in trades, but an artist and being an artist serves me very well.
What's your
And
name, sir?
I think, I'm sorry?
What is your name,
Yes.
sir?
I do tile work.
Or what is your name?
Oh, Randy Watson.
Andy. Okay.
And I live here in Portsmouth and I had a grandfather who was an artist and he said, good art should be like a visual symphony. And I like when it sings to you, not screams at you. And some of my art is touching it is just as important as being able to look at it. And so there's a lot of things, I think, way outside the box. My business slogan is with a passion for the extraordinary and the impossible. So, but it should be, and there's so many different types of art, you know, and my two-dimensional is abstract, flowers or trees or whatever, or just whatever. But it's something that has a nice flow to it. And so this is, I love listening to all this stuff that I haven't thought about before, but you know, how you make it work. And so thank you for letting me be here.
Good. Yes, come anytime.
Fun to be
Yeah.
here and also
Yeah.
to speak.
Yeah, it's great. So Heather, any questions?
Where to
I want to
start?
say I'm really excited to be on the committee and I have a lot of time on my hands because I just retired. So if anybody needs any help on any discrete projects or anything, please reach out.
Great.
Well, you might want to join Mara and Lenny.
We might need somebody to break up our.
Yeah.
Love to learn how to
Tell them
hang.
when our next meeting is, which is,
Sure.
or we can do it after that.
Okay,
We can
sure.
do it together.
Okay.
So if we're done, a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Second.
Second.
Mara and Len.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Ernie.
Ernie's in Florida.
It's a lot.